So good morning, everybody. Thank you all so much for coming to the Community Energy Day of Action kickoff. Kind of a mouthful. But before we begin, I would like to welcome everybody here today on the first day of spring. As of today, there will be more sunlight than darkness until we get to the end of the summer. And really, just what a fitting day to talk about all the possibilities for solar energy across the Commonwealth. For those of you that I haven't met yet, my name is Belle Sherwood, and I'm a climate and clean energy associate with PennEnvironment, which is one of the coalition partners in the Our Solar PA group that's responsible for planning this day and inviting you all here this morning. We really are so appreciative that you could join this call and the calls for the rest of the day to help us take action and advocate for community energy. At the kickoff call this morning, we'll learn more about what exactly community energy is, hear some stories from our partners in community energy here today and across the country, and we'll learn more about some of the actions we'll be taking later today. We are joined by, I apologize, I've not met you before, so I want to make sure I say your name correctly. Would you mind introducing yourself briefly? Sachiko?
Yeah, good morning, Belle. My name is Sachiko Graber. I'm the National Partnerships Lead with Cooperative Energy Futures, which is a community solar cooperative based in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. And as you mentioned, you're from Minnesota, so not here in Pennsylvania, but it's a state where similar legislation has been passed. So we'll hear about all the great opportunities that's been able to bring. And then we'll also hear from Bobby Hughes, if you'd like to introduce yourself briefly as well.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Bobby Hughes. I'm the executive director for the Eastern Pennsylvania Coalition for Abandoned Mine Reclamation, and we are a regional environmental nonprofit that works with county conservation districts, community watershed organizations, nonprofits, our local governments, as well as serving as a liaison between the state and federal agencies involved in abandoned mine reclamation and advocating for clean alternative energy projects on those abandoned mines that were previously abandoned in 1977. So sort of where we draw the line, and that's nationwide for that particular legislation that was through the Surface Mining Control and Reclamation Act. So happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We will hear from both of them in just a moment here. But I want to just get into what exactly community energy is, what we're all here today. A quick reminder and refresher for everyone who's joined us. So, most of you were probably first familiar with community solar, which was the initiative to allow multiple people to take part in and share energy from a single solar project. This would allow Pennsylvanians who either can't afford solar panels or face, barriers to getting panels themselves, such as an insufficient roof, maybe they don't own their roof, or they just can't install solar panels in their area. That legislation would allow them to lease solar from another development. Many other states have already implemented similar legislation, including our neighbors like New York, Delaware, and hate to say it, but New Jersey's beat us to the punch. Pennsylvania really needs to catch up and allow our residents across the Commonwealth to access solar energy. That's why the governor introduced in his lightning plan, which, among other things, included a proposal for community energy, which is a bill that incorporates community solar with other types of energy like geothermal, so that Pennsylvanians can share in multiple types of renewable energy, including solar. This bill would mean that anyone who wants to use and support renewable energy would be able to do so and be guaranteed that switching to that renewable project, like solar or geothermal, would save them money on their electricity bills. Our goal is really to eliminate all the obstacles to renewable energy and provide access to cleaner electricity through programs like community energy slash community solar. This will really benefit our wallets with those guaranteed savings and benefit our environment by helping us move away from damaging oil and gas. And together, we're going to make that happen. And a big part of that is going to happen today. But before I get into the specific actions and what we're going to do later, I want to make sure we can hear from some of the speakers about their vision for community energy. So first, I would like to reintroduce Sachiko Graber, the National Partnerships Lead with Cooperative Energy Futures. Take it away.
Sure. Thank you so much, Belle. And I'm really excited to be here with all of you today. I just dropped in the chat that I grew up and was raised in Collegeville, Pennsylvania. So this work is near and dear to my heart. Most of my family still lives in the greater Philadelphia area, and um, it's really exciting to see this work progressing. With my work with Cooperative Energy Futures, I just wanted to explain that CEF is a member-owned community solar cooperative based in Minnesota. So CEF is in the business of building, owning, and subscribing community solar gardens, and we've been doing this for over a decade. Two things that we appreciate most about the community solar model are first, that it enables local distributed energy. And second, that it increases accessibility to clean energy resources like solar. So much like Belle was just describing, it's really important to us that we're able to serve subscribers who, for us, they're more than 50% low income customers, and they include renters who are unable to own their own household solar because they don't control their roofs. We've been able to locally site clean energy projects with over a dozen local partners, including a local church roof, farms where we deploy solar grazing, and in small towns across Minnesota. We serve right now hundreds of Minnesotans and help them to save money on their electricity bills. I wanted to share just briefly the story of the Minneapolis church where we deployed our first project, Shiloh. The church was struggling financially, and low-income, predominantly Black church members were not able to ramp up individual giving. And so, in this trend that I think we've seen with a lot of smaller churches across the country, they were really struggling to make ends meet week to week. We were able to support this church's ongoing ability to serve the community by developing a solar project on their roof. This provided for an annual lease payment to the church, which helps them to cover costs. Plus, the church is the anchor subscriber to our solar project, which means they're getting electricity for substantially cheaper than what they were used to paying. This was really a win-win for both the co-op and the church because it enabled us to develop a project, and 80% of the electricity was going to community members, but it also enabled the church to boost up its business model and to stay in business. Cooperative Energy Futures is just extraordinarily pleased to hear that you all in the state of Pennsylvania are considering enabling community energy. We are really looking forward to collaborating on this exciting development, and we're super happy to be a resource. Minnesota enabled community solar more than a decade ago, and so if there are ways that we can be an ally or a resource in this work, we're really happy to do so.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit more about what community solar has been able to create for states outside of Pennsylvania and what it can look like for us here once we take these actions and help get these bills passed. Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Executive Director with the Eastern Pennsylvania Coalition for Abandoned Mine Reclamation, Bobby Hughes. Oh, I think he dropped off there. That's okay. We'll wait for him to hop back on. It seemed like he was moving around a bit there. Well, while we wait, I know, Sachiko, that you have to head out soon, but does anyone quickly have any thoughts or questions, maybe about cooperative energy futures or what successful community solar community legislation has looked like? Yeah. If so, feel free to drop it in the chat or just unmute. Wanted to give it a quick second as we wait for Bobby to hop back on.
Ooh, I see Ellen. Yeah, I had a quick question for Sachiko. I've heard so many good things about y'all and about Minnesota's like community solar efforts. So way to kick butt. Wondering about the church project. Like if you had I don't know if you all have like more photos or like more, info about that project, it'd be super useful here. Like because I think what we've seen is like anywhere that doesn't have community solar yet, it's like painting a picture and helping folks understand like what is it, how does it work, making it real tangible, and like we found that like faith examples, church examples, synagogue examples can really help paint a picture. So I don't know if I'd love to see if you just have like a photo of the church or any more info on that project. We could share it in Pennsylvania. I think that'd be cool or helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have just been working on a series of case studies about some of our projects because these stories are really helpful to circulate. I can share the draft with you as well as a handful of photos. If I just share them, Belle, with you, could those get, okay, perfect. And I'll also say there are a couple of reports out there that do a great job kind of highlighting examples and case studies about community solar across the country. I'm sure you've come across those, but I can include a few links to those too, just so you have them at your fingertips.
Wonderful. Quickly, thoughts or questions? Yes, go ahead. Oh, I think we have a question in the chat here from Phyllis. Does Cooperative Energy Future work outside Minnesota? Have you
Ooh,
guys
great
supported outside
question.
Minnesota?
Yeah, so the projects that we own and like our cooperative members are all based in Minnesota. But because we were one of the first cooperative solar co-ops in the country, if not the first, we've been doing a lot of work to help enable younger, newer co-ops that are trying to kind of get on their feet outside of the state. So we are a development partner with a cooperative in South Chicago that is developing its first set of projects. We're exploring partnerships in West Virginia and New Jersey to kind of help those programs get on their feet. So if there are opportunities for, partnership or technical assistance, we would not be able, just because of our bylaws, to own a project or operate a project outside of Minnesota, but we would love to support other organizations that are aligned and are doing this work. And I know we'll pass over to Bobby in just a sec. I will drop my email and cell number in the chat, and then I'll follow up with Belle with those resources. So I apologize. I'm going to have to hop off in just a second to make it to another call, but thank you all so much for the opportunity to join this morning, and good luck kicking off this exciting work.
Thank you so much for sharing a little bit more about cooperative energy futures. I think it's really great to see the other stories and other states that have been able to succeed in this. So thank you so much. And as I mentioned, I will also take some of that information and share it out with our members here so we can also follow up after this. Thank you. And I see that Bobby's been able to hop back on.
Yeah. Sorry, Belle. My laptop just kind of went into a sleep mode, and I had plugged it in just to make sure it had a full charge. So I hopped back quick.
That's always what happens. It's like when you need it most is when it lets you down. But glad you could hop back on. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it to you. And I know you have a couple slides here, so I'll go ahead and get these up.
Yeah, if you could share that, and then I'll go through some of the work that our coalition has been doing for the last few years here, and particularly advocating for solar development, both from a community perspective and at a grid scale opportunities on abandoned mine lands. And so in July of 24, but in July of 23, we held a solar summit after doing stakeholder meetings throughout the state across Pennsylvania with a number of partners and industry folks and landowners and conservation districts and NGOs to look at the potential for solar development on previously impacted, abandoned, and mine lands that were already reclaimed. And so we did this report with the Energy Office of DEP and worked with Labella Associates to pull together a whole series of recommendations on, after we've done the analysis on what are the possibilities for doing this work and maybe alleviating some of the pressure on agricultural lands throughout the state by really utilizing these mine lands, and what would be some of the impediments, the hurdles, or opportunities that we could look at on these mine lands. And so I'll throw a link after I'm done in the chat for this report, or maybe Bella has it to be able to send out to everybody, but I can definitely do that. And you can take a look at that report. And I'm just going to go over a few quick highlights from that report that will give you an idea of what we have as an opportunity here in Pennsylvania for these abandoned mine lands. So if you go to the next slide. So kind of some of the benefits of mine lands is like we're kind of leveraging some of that existing land and infrastructure that was already there previously by either mining companies that might have gone bankrupt, but they've left some of the infrastructure on the sites. There's maybe some utilities already into these areas that could be utilized to connect back up to the grid. And while we're doing this, we could be preserving a lot more of the agricultural and green space around the state by utilizing these sites that typically are underutilized. And there's a lot of economic development opportunities and funding and infrastructure money going into these sites. So it makes a lot of sense to see these as opportunities for energy development into the communities, particularly in the coal fields fields of the anthracite region and in the bituminous region in Western Pennsylvania and here in the Northeast that are, we have some pretty impoverished communities that would really benefit from community solar if the distribution and transmission of that electricity can be fed back into the grid to reduce some of the rates for the communities that we're working with. So it does have some revitalization component to it and incentives as we're trying to make that a case for these areas. And that's why we've supported community solar. And we think it could create some job opportunities here, whereas they're not just big box warehouse distribution centers going up or manufacturing facilities and things like that. But if they can benefit from other incentives in the market to put rooftop solar on those buildings as they're being built, it could be a great way to create some job opportunities and benefit the region. Okay, next slide. We built a solar suitability model, it's called in GIS, Geographic Information Systems, that really looks at the entire state, and we're doing it in chunks, but we're looking at developing and have developed this model that could locate the areas around the state that would be most suitable for solar development, that aren't on steep slopes, that aren't in areas where there are wetlands, and there are places that, certain site criteria that we would select in our model would filter out those areas that are not as suitable, and then the ones that are. And it connects up to where we already have existing power structures or grids that we can connect to, what type of KV lines might be there, and if there are power substations that were historically utilized by coal companies of the past, they might be in close proximity. And that's how we're able to filter some of these out for the region. And we've developed different types of digital elevation models and different filters within our model that can allow us to help developers or help communities identify what might be the area that would be most suitable. But then you got to kind of dive down into who owns the land and then look at what's the zoning, any type of restrictions that might be used from a local land development perspective, and then dig a little bit deeper for actually getting to work on the ground. But it's an interesting model that we've developed that helps us to do that, to really maybe cite some of these sites. If you go to the next slide, if you just take a look, if we combined all of the active and abandoned mine lands, active mine lands are ones that coal companies are actively mining throughout Pennsylvania, and the abandoned mine lands, which are the ones that have been unreclaimed since 1977, you're looking at a total of 1.89 million acres of land totally. And what you can see there on the map is the 4 coal basins of the anthracite region, and you can see the bituminous region from State College sort of west. Those areas there are both abandoned and active. The active is probably the ones that are in the blue, and then the orange is, I don't know what's showing up on the map there, is what are abandoned. If you go to the next slide, what we deal with is mostly the Title IV of the Surface Mining Control and Reclamation Act, and it's called the Abandoned Mine Lands Program, and that's where the Abandoned Mine Lands Fund comes in to do a lot of the restoration work on both reclamation and on mine drainage abatement and or cleanup of our rivers and streams that are impacted by mining across Pennsylvania, of which there are 5,500 miles of streams polluted by these impacts from abandoned mines. And so there are over 216,279 acres. Now, this is 2023 data from the report, but this gives you an idea of how many acres are left still unreclaimed. If you go to the next slide, you can see that this is the amount of acres that have been reclaimed since 1977, 38,654. And so those sites that are reclaimed are actually the low-hanging fruit because they are already backfilled. They already may have an appropriate type of grade that you might be able to set up a solar system on in an array. And they may have haul roads and things going into them, but they may not all have the utility infrastructure to do this work. So that's some of the hurdles we would have to get through. If you go to the next slide, and in terms of unreclaimed of Title IV acres of the Surface Mining Act that's available for work to be done on, there's about 177,624 acres remaining that are unreclaimed across the state. Next slide. When we looked at this and did a real cursory analysis of what could be available just for community scale solar, there's over 27,152 acres this is a statewide map, so we didn't really zoom in on this here, but these are based on parcels of acreage of lands that might be suitable for community scale, based on the acreage available in these areas on these abandoned mine lands, of sites that were already reclaimed. If you go to the next one, on the unreclaimed sites, it's an even larger number. There are 141,515 acres we were able to come up with through the analysis of the sites that have yet to be reclaimed. But that would take a lot more time, effort, and money to get these sites prepared. So these ones are on the list, but obviously would take a lot longer because it needs funding to do the reclamation work. And I see some questions coming in the chat, and I'll answer those as quickly as I can here. What we wanted to do in that report was actually came out with an idea to really focus in on these mine lands, and obviously passing and enabling community solar legislation would help out. And we would try to establish a goal for solar sites on previously mined lands, and maybe they could start up a solar grant fund to do this on some of these areas. But there's not a lot of tax abatement or rebate programs for these sites in these communities that were, most of them are in environmental justice areas. And as you all well know, that's been sort of taken off the table in a lot of ways for the work that we're trying to do in Pennsylvania here and even nationally. But this is places where they should have some priority for reclamation. And so we've done a lot of this background and legwork to kind of give some ideas to both the Energy Office and the Governor's Office to take a look at ways that we can continue this education and outreach to the private sector, and working on power purchase agreement guidance, look into specific areas and doing some municipal outreach, which the state does to work and provide technical assistance for model ordinance development, because many of these communities don't have that. And then there's these, the mapping tools that we're working on, and maybe we can come up with this sort of build ready site program that could be utilized. And investment of the funds that are coming in from the infrastructure and the IRA funds are sort of vital for this type of work. And it's a little bit disjointed in terms of the points of contact right now at the state. So we're trying to figure out ways where we can look to improve some of the policies and procedures at the state and federal level to support this type of work. And that's what we've been advocating for here in the last few years in Pennsylvania. And we hope, and we have been signing on to a number of the, Vote Solar and some of the different pieces of legislation that have been moving forward so that we get abandoned mine lands into the conversation. And I see in the question here, are they, is the Title IV funds frozen? No, the Title IV funds aren't frozen right now. The governor here has done a great job in making sure that those obligated funds that are going to come into PA are still coming. There was an issue with some of just the way the money would come in from the federal government into the state's coffers, I believe was one of the major hurdles that he had a few weeks back, but that's been resolved. The program's still open. The funding to apply for these types of grants is still open, and we haven't seen any problems with that going forward. I know somebody mentioned about how many kilowatts can be produced on average on an acre. That's a good question. We're kind of in a learning curve ourselves and trying to work with some of the developers to figure out that type of information. And until we can really see some of these projects, like the Mineral Basins project that's out in the center of the state, and there are some here in the Northeast that are going in the Hazleton area, I don't have a lot of data to really show what that is. But I'd have to get back to you if I can talk to some folks in the industry that might know what that might be, because the acres to be utilized is really going to be depend on how much reclamation costs and work has to go into, developing that site, how much of the infrastructure needs to be put into, I say connect the utility poles out to the grid infrastructure that's either existing, or does a grid need to be built out for that work. So there's still some hurdles there. And I think if you get a chance to take a look at the assessment report, you'll find that we've come up with a lot of great recommendations in there. And some of the answers to the questions might be in the report. I'm just going down through. Maybe there's the last one here from Tom Figo. Is the land mostly rural electric cooperative service territory, or are there crossovers? I'm not sure there's a lot of electric. It's UGI, it's PPL. up here in the Northeast. I know there's a number of different utilities that are throughout the state. It's Dominion, and I don't. All the infrastructure that is available that would need to be built out into some of these lands is what's not been done. The only time that there will be readily available infrastructure is if there was a previous coal fired maybe plant that's been decommissioned or shut down, and they left the poles there. But for the most part, many of these sites are really rural in a sense that it may have a haul road back into the woods and there's no utilities going to it at all. These are abandoned stripping pits or, infrastructure from old coal breakers and mine colliery complexes, but not a lot of electricity to many of these sites that we're talking about. Okay, I don't know if I've said enough, but I think I'm good there, Belle. What do you think?
Yeah, thank you so much, Bobby, for sharing a little bit more about sort of this unexpected area where solar and community solar can really blossom and help a ton of communities in that area. I'm sort of always happy to see what spaces are out there that you might not think of can really be great hubs for community solar, community energy, and help get this legislation forward. So thank you so much. Great. Um, Now, as you have heard today, community energy, community solar is a great opportunity for us all to save energy, save money, and really help, save our environment from the dangerous pollutants like gas and oil. Our elected officials in Harrisburg have proposed legislation for community energy, which is an awesome start. But we really need to make sure that these bills make it across the finish line and onto the governor's desk. That's why we're all here today, to take action that will make community energy a reality. Throughout the day today, we'll have power hours where you'll get the resources and training to email or write letters to your elected officials, call your legislators directly, write letters to local media outlets in support of community energy, and take photos that highlight how many of us want solar energy access across the state. As a note, these power hours may not take a full hour, as the name might suggest, and we just ask that you can join when you're available. A member from the Our Solar PA Coalition will be on the call to help guide you through the action and answer any questions you might have. The Zoom link for all of those meetings is the same as the link you're on right now. Just click on this link again at the time of the power hour you're able to join. I'm going to drop kind of a big link in the chat here, but it goes through and reviews today's schedule again. So if you do want a reminder of what times or which actions today, you can go ahead and click on that link. I'll also review quickly that at 12 p.m. today, we'll be emailing or writing letters to our elected officials, and that will be hosted by Phyllis. At 1 p.m., you'll be calling your elected officials. That's overseen by Shakabuna. At 2 o'clock, we're going to write letters to the editor. I'll help lead that one. And at 3 o'clock, Roger's going to help walk us through the photo petitions, helping make a plan of action to actually get some of those photos in. And then at 6 p.m. today, after we've taken all of our actions, been, done a ton of outreach to our elected officials in support of community energy, we'll come together again and review all the excellent work that we've done. If you do have questions throughout the day, you can hop on one of these Zoom links, and at those designated times, someone from the coalition will be on to help answer your questions or remind you of what time things are. But you're also more than welcome to reach out to myself. I'm going to put my email here in the chat. And if you do have any questions, feel free to email me there and I'll help make sure you get back on to take action. I really look forward to seeing all of you today throughout those various blocks as we get involved in more of this work. But I want to take a quick pause here and see if anyone has any questions. Good question about, is the bill number for community energy ready? Just to give some context on this, a proposed legislation gets a bill number once it's been fully introduced. As of right now, the bill hasn't been introduced. It doesn't have a bill number, but we're hoping to get all this momentum for people and our legislators to sign on in support of the bill. So once it's introduced, it has a ton of great support for it and can move through the House, the Senate, and to the governor's desk as quickly and as easily as possible.